She raised her glass, smirking at the whole room, and said the one sentence she thought would crush me. Just so everyone knows, Mark and I agreed to take a break from being exclusive. People gasped. A few even laughed. They all expected me to shrink, fold, fall apart. Instead, I looked her dead in the eye and did something that made every single person in that living room freeze. Before I get into what happened, make sure to subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. Because trust me, this night went places no one expected. Now let me take you back to the beginning. It was a Friday evening at Dylan and Rebecca's house. Nothing fancy, just a casual get-together. About 20 people scattered around the living room and kitchen, classic rock humming through the speakers, the smell of barbecue drifting in from the patio. I was leaning near the island countertop, talking football with a couple of coworkers, nursing a light beer I didn't even really want. I remember feeling tired. Not physically, just emotionally worn. Like I'd been running in place for months. My wife, Laura, was on the opposite side of the room with her group of friends, laughing too loudly at every mediocre joke. She kept glancing at me. Quick little looks that weren't affectionate, weren't warm. More like she was watching a fuse burn. I'd seen that look before. Laura loved tests, loved pushing limits, loved seeing how far she could go before someone pushed back. Lately, she'd been dropping hints, little jabs about how some couples evolve, how monogamy feels ancient, how maybe some freedom would help us feel alive again. I kept brushing it off, thinking she was just bored, maybe restless. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. When she suddenly stood up in the center of the living room and called for everyone's attention, I felt the smallest, sharpest flicker of dread. Dylan turned the music down. Conversations died mid-sentence. I set my beer on the counter and watched her with a strange, calm clarity. She flashed that bright, performative smile, the one she saved for Instagram photos and high-stakes manipulation. "I just want to make a quick announcement," she said, raising her glass like she was giving a toast. "Mark and I have agreed to, well, take a more modern approach to our marriage. We're not exclusive anymore." It hit the room like a dropped tray of dishes that a couple of people choked on drinks. Someone whispered, "Are you serious?" Laura waited, eyes glittering, expecting humiliation to wash over me like a wave. She thought I'd crack. She thought I'd beg her to stop. She thought this was her big victory. But something in me snapped into place, quiet, controlled, steady. That I didn't raise my voice, that I didn't make a scene, that I didn't even blink. I just nodded once and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "If that's what you want, fine." The smile on her face flickered, barely, but I saw it. She expected tears that I gave her steel. She laughed nervously. "Well, yes, I mean, this is something we talked about." "We didn't talk about it," I corrected calmly. "You talked. You never cared about whether I agreed." A murmur went through the room. Her face froze. The game she tried to start had already slipped out of her hands, and she could feel it. She opened her mouth, probably to backtrack, to save face. But before she could get a word out, something happened that flipped the entire night upside down. I turned slightly, looked toward the couch, and met the eyes of someone who saw the entire thing unfold with razor-sharp clarity. And that's when everything truly began. The moment our eyes met, everything in the room shifted. Sitting on the edge of the couch was Jenna, one of Laura's friends, though calling her that was generous. Jenna was the type who said little but noticed everything. Sharp, calm, and always 10 steps ahead of whatever nonsense the people around her were stirring up. She wasn't flashy like Laura or overly social like the others. She carried herself with a kind of grounded confidence that made people quiet down when she spoke. And when I looked at her after Laura's little performance, she didn't look shocked or pitying. She looked almost relieved, like someone witnessing justice finally catching up to arrogance. Laura saw me glance toward her and stiffened, as if suddenly understanding that the script she'd written in her head for tonight wasn't being followed. But she still believed she could wrestle the moment back under control. She lifted her chin and said, I mean, Mark, we've had conversations about this, haven't we? The room knew she was lying. Hell, I think even she knew she was lying. But she pressed forward anyway, desperate to regain footing. I didn't bother responding. I just kept looking at Jenna. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt my pulse settle instead of spike. I walked away from the island, ignoring Laura's half-stammered attempt to call after me, and approached the couch. People held their breaths. It was one of those strange social moments when the air feels heavy, like everyone is leaning forward without moving. I stopped beside Jenna and asked, quietly but clearly, "Do you have plans this weekend?" Conversations died entirely. Even the refrigerator hum suddenly felt too loud. Jenna glanced at Laura, then back at me, her expression shifting into something almost mischievous. "No," she said. "Why?" "Dinner," I said. "I'd like to take you out." Jenna didn't hesitate, not even for a second. "I'd like that," she replied. The room reacted as if I'd dropped a firework into the middle of it. Someone exhaled loudly in disbelief. Someone else whispered, "Oh my God." My heart didn't race. I didn't feel triumphant. Honestly, I felt nothing but clarity. Meanwhile, Laura's face twisted into something jagged. The shock hit her first, wide eyes, parted lips, then rage rising underneath like boiling water. "Jenna," she said sharply, "you're not serious." Jenna crossed her legs calmly, folding her hands on her knee like she were settling into a meeting. "Why wouldn't I be?" "Because," Laura sputtered, "because he's my husband." "You just announced to everyone that he no longer is," Jenna replied, without raising her voice. That one sentence sliced the room open. Laura took a stumbling step forward, face pale but eyes burning. "Mark, what the hell are you doing?" "Accepting what you announced," I said. "No anger. No theatrics. Just truth. You said we're not exclusive. So here we are." She laughed, a panicked, ugly sound, and looked desperately at the people around her, searching for someone, anyone, to jump in and rescue her. No one moved. People avoided eye contact, stared into their drinks, shifted uncomfortably. Not because they were on my side, but because they'd finally seen her lose control. And nothing unsettled Laura more than losing control. "This isn't funny," she hissed. I nodded. "Agreed." Jenna stood up then, smooth and unhurried, grabbed her denim jacket from the back of the couch, and said, "Text me the details." She didn't even look at Laura as she moved toward the front door. "Thanks for hosting," she said to Dylan as she passed. "Your parties never disappoint." The door closed behind her with a soft click, and that tiny sound shattered what was left of Laura's composure. Her breathing turned shallow, her face blotchy with humiliation and fury. She tried to speak, but no words came out, only a strangled, broken whisper of my name. I gave her nothing. No reassurance. No apology. No rescue. For the first time in years, I didn't rush to soothe her chaos. Instead, I walked toward the sliding door leading to the driveway and said, "We can talk outside." The murmurs behind us grew louder as I opened the door, and she followed me like someone walking toward a sentence they wrote for someone else. Outside, the cold night air hit us, and she spun toward me, finally finding her voice. "What the hell was that?" she snapped. Her hands were trembling. I folded my arms, leaning casually against Dylan's porch railing. "You wanted freedom," I said. "So now you have it." "Not like that," she barked. "God, Mark, are you insane? Asking out Jenna? In front of everyone. In front of the same everyone you announced our non-exclusive marriage to," I said. "Seems fitting." She slapped her hand against her thigh in frustration. "I was joking." "You weren't," I replied. "And even if you were, jokes don't require declarations. Declarations require intent." "You're twisting this," she yelled. "No," I said. "You are." She stood there shaking, her carefully crafted persona collapsing piece by piece. And the strange part was, watching her unravel didn't feel satisfying. It felt inevitable, like a wheel that had been rolling toward the edge for far too long. "Mark," she said finally, her voice cracking. We need to talk about this. We are talking. Not here, she whispered. Then say what you need to say. But she didn't. Because for the first time in our marriage, she wasn't the one holding power. And she didn't know how to speak without it. I pushed away from the railing, walked past her, and headed inside, leaving her standing in the driveway staring at the pavement like she expected it to give her an answer. And with that, the night, her night, was no longer hers. When I walked back inside, the energy of the party had collapsed. People were gathering jackets, murmuring excuses, pretending to check phones they suddenly needed to answer. The illusion of a fun night had evaporated, replaced by something dense and awkward. Laura came in a minute later, her face streaked with embarrassment and anger, but she tried to smooth herself back together, lifting her chin like none of this had happened. I didn't look at her. I grabbed my keys from the counter, told Dylan I was heading out, and walked to my car without waiting for her. She didn't follow immediately, which surprised me. She stayed behind, desperate to spin her version of events to whoever would still listen. That alone told me everything I needed to know. By the time I got home, the house felt alien. Familiar walls, familiar furniture, but none of it felt like mine anymore. I sat on the couch in the dim light of a lamp, staring at nothing. Not angry, not sad. More like a curtain had finally been pulled back, and I was seeing the stage for what it really was. My phone buzzed. A text from Jenna. Just checking you good? I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, surprisingly, yes. Another buzz. She had it coming. She's been poking at everyone for years. Someone had to finally push back. I felt something loosen in my chest, like a knot quietly untangling. Thanks, I replied. Saturday at 7? Works for me, she wrote. Get some rest. You'll need it. I smirked. She wasn't wrong. Laura came home close to midnight. I heard her car door slam, fast footsteps up the walkway, then the front door swinging open. She didn't say hello. She didn't even take off her coat. She just marched straight into the living room and planted herself in front of me. We need to talk, she said, voice shaking. Go ahead, I replied. Her eyes were red from crying, and her mascara had smudged. But beneath that was something harder, a flicker of fury, like she still believed she could salvage control. What happened tonight was unacceptable, she said. You humiliated me. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the audacity was unbelievable. I humiliated you? You made a public announcement that you unilaterally changed the nature of our marriage. In front of 20 people. I was tipsy, she snapped. I wasn't thinking straight. You had 3 glasses of wine in 2 hours, I said. You were perfectly aware. She shifted, flailing for a new angle. It was a joke. A stupid joke. And you took it seriously on purpose to hurt me. No, I replied. I took it seriously because you meant it. And because you've been laying the groundwork for months. You wanted an excuse. Tonight you finally grabbed one. Her face twisted with something raw, something defensive. So now what? She demanded. You're actually planning to go out with her? Yes. She threw her hands up. She's my friend. Was your friend? I corrected. That ended the moment she told you she could do everything better than you. The flash in her eyes was instant, anger mixed with humiliation. You're being cruel, she whispered. I'm being honest, I said. Something you haven't offered me in a long time. She paced, her boots thumping against the hardwood floor. So what? You're just going to start dating other people because of one stupid comment? That's childish. Watch me, I said. She froze. I can't believe you're doing this. Believe it. I'll tell everyone you're cheating, she threatened. I reached for the remote, muted the TV, and looked her straight in the eyes. Go ahead, but make sure you also tell them that you publicly declared our marriage open, and that you said you were giving us both freedom. She swallowed hard. Realization washed over her. She'd walked into a trap she built herself. Here's the truth, I continued. You've been emotionally checked out for months. You've been talking about Trevor from work nonstop. The late-night texts. The hints about other couples. You wanted to explore without the guilt. without responsibility, without admitting it. She opened her mouth, but said nothing. So yes, I finished. I'm going out Saturday. She dropped onto the armchair like someone had pulled the ground out from under her. We can fix this, she whispered. I didn't respond. I stood up, headed to the hallway, and said, guest room or couch. Your choice. That night she cried loudly enough for me to hear through the door, but I didn't get up. The next morning she tried a new tactic. Breakfast on the table, warm smile stretched too wide, soft voice asking how I slept. I thanked her for the meal, grabbed my jacket, and left for work. She called 6 times during the day. I ignored all of them. When I returned home that evening, she was waiting again, arms crossed, fury back in full force. You're being childish, she snapped. You're ignoring me. I don't have anything to add, I replied. We said everything last night. Fine, she said sharply. Then I'm going out Friday. Since we're doing this now. I shrugged. Have fun. That single calm phrase knocked the wind out of her. She expected jealousy. She expected rage. She expected the old version of me. Instead, I turned around, grabbed ingredients from the fridge, and started making dinner. She followed me like a shadow, waiting for the explosion that never came. I didn't give it to her. She detonated the bomb. Now she wanted to decide how large the damage was. Not this time. She left me alone after that, pacing through the house like a restless ghost. Friday came. She got dressed, too much makeup, hair done professionally, clothes she only wore when she wanted attention. She left around 8. I ordered pizza, watched a movie, went to bed early. She came home before midnight, crying. I heard the soft sobs through the guest room door, but I didn't get up. Sympathy dies when respect does. Saturday morning, I woke up before sunrise, not because I was nervous about the evening. Surprisingly, I wasn't, but because I finally felt a kind of clarity I hadn't experienced in years. I drove to the gym, worked out longer than usual, let the burn in my muscles quiet my thoughts. By the time I returned home, the house smelled like fresh coffee. Laura was sitting at the kitchen table, wrapped in a sweater, staring into her mug like it held the secrets of the universe. She looked drained, her eyes swollen from crying. For a moment, I wondered if she'd try another performance. Tears, apologies, manipulative charm. But when she spoke, her voice was small. Last night didn't happen the way I thought it would. I grabbed a mug, poured coffee, sat across from her. How was Trevor? She flinched, then shook her head. I couldn't. We met for drinks, but nothing happened. I realized I didn't want to do any of this. Not really. Okay, I said. Just that. Nothing more. She blinked, surprised by the lack of reaction. Okay, that's all you have to say. I don't know what you expected, I replied. Applause for not cheating? She let out a shaky breath. I want you to cancel tonight. Not happening. Why? She demanded, raising her voice. If I didn't go through with anything, why should you? I sat back, arms crossed. Because this isn't about revenge or evening the score. It's about respect and the lack of it. Tonight isn't about Trevor or Jenna. It's about how you treated me and how I'm done allowing it. She stared at the table, twisting a napkin in her hands. Can we fix this? I don't know, I said honestly. Her voice cracked. What if I try harder? Trying harder isn't the issue, I said. Being honest is. She looked older somehow, smaller than the woman who strutted into a party thinking she could announce a one-sided decision and come out victorious. She didn't say anything else, and I didn't fill the silence for her. The day passed quietly. She hovered, following me with her eyes as I moved around the house, watching me like someone guarding a fragile object they'd already broken. When I showered at 6:30, she sat stiffly on the edge of the couch, her arms crossed so tightly they were practically welded. At exactly 6:55, I walked out in the shirt she always said I never deserved to wear because it was too stylish for someone who hates going out. I looked at her. She looked away. Have a good time, she muttered. Thanks, I said. Don't wait up. That hit her like a physical blow. I left before she could recover. The air outside felt different, lighter somehow, as I got into my car and headed to Jenna's place. She opened the door right as I parked, stepping out onto the walkway in a simple black dress that didn't scream for attention but commanded it anyway. She smiled when she saw me. "Right on time," she said. I shrugged. "Only virtue I'm confident about." "Well," she replied, locking her door behind her. "It's a good place to start." The drive was easy. No awkward small talk. No tension. She teased me about my serious taste in music. I teased her about her obsession with perfectly organized playlists. Everything just flowed. When we arrived at the Italian restaurant she recommended, the hostess led us to a booth tucked away near the back. Candlelight flickered across the table, catching the copper strands in Jenna's hair. She glanced at the menu, then at me. "So," she said casually, "how bad did things get after I left the party?" I let out a breath. Bad enough. Tears, denial, bargaining, denial again, anger, then more denial. "Let me guess," she said. She claimed she was just joking. First thing out of her mouth. Jenna shook her head and leaned back. Classic. Make a public declaration, then pretend it was all fun and games when the consequences show up. "You've seen her do it before," I said. "Not this exact thing," Jenna replied, "but yeah, she's always been a boundary pusher. Always testing people. Always expecting others to bend." "I guess I bent too much," I said. "No," Jenna corrected. "You gave grace." She mistook it for weakness. The words hit harder than I expected. Our drinks arrived, giving me a moment to breathe. "Can I be blunt?" Jenna asked. "Please." I never liked the way she treated you. From the minute I met her, everything was a competition. Everything was about status, image, control. And when she talked about you behind your back, she stopped herself. "What did she say?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Jenna hesitated. "Are you sure you want to know?" "Yes." "She'd call you boring," Jenna said quietly. "Predictable." Said you lacked ambition. Said Trevor understood her in ways you couldn't. She compared you two constantly. I nodded slowly. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But it wasn't surprising. It only confirmed a truth I'd been trying not to face. "None of it was true," Jenna added. "You're steady, responsible, kind. That's not boring. That's solid." Dinner came, warm plates filling the table with comforting smells. We talked about everything: work, travel, embarrassing childhood stories, music, family. No pretense. No games. Just a conversation between two adults who actually listened to each other. Dessert arrived before I even realized time had passed. "So," she said, swirling her spoon in her coffee, "what's your plan? With your marriage?" I paused. "I honestly don't know." "I think you do," she said gently. I didn't argue. After dinner, I drove her home. When she stepped out, she leaned through the open window and said, "Whatever happens, choose what gives you peace, not what keeps you trapped." I nodded. "Thank you." She tapped the roof of the car lightly. "If you ever want to do this again, you know where I live." No pressure. I drove home feeling strangely grounded. When I walked inside, Laura was sitting on the couch, eyes swollen, face blotched. She looked at me like she already knew the answer to a question she hadn't dared ask. "You actually had a good time," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "I did." And something in her broke. She stood up the moment I stepped fully into the room, her arms wrapped around herself like she needed to hold her own pieces together. Her voice cracked when she spoke. "So what now? Are you going to keep seeing her?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe." We had dinner. That's all. She let out a bitter laugh. "That's all. Do you hear yourself? You went out with my friend." "Former friend," I corrected, and yes. I went to dinner with someone who enjoyed my company. That last line hit her like a slap. She winced, her face twisting. "That's not fair." "Fair," I repeated. "Laura, you announced to a room full of people that you unilaterally opened our marriage. You tried to humiliate me publicly, and you expected me to take it. You didn't think I'd stand up for myself. That's the problem." She sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it. Exactly, I said. You thought you could control the fallout. But you can't. Silence hung between us, heavy and suffocating. Are you in love with her? She finally whispered. No, I said. But I respect her. And she respects me. That's more than we've had in a long time. Her shoulders shook as she cried again, but I didn't move toward her. I couldn't. Something inside me had shifted too far to go back. I walked toward the bedroom. We can talk more tomorrow, I said. But nothing changes tonight. That night, I slept in our bed for the first time in days. She stayed in the guest room. I didn't sleep much. Not because of guilt, because I knew a storm was coming. Monday morning started with a text from Dylan. Heads up, Laura called Rebecca. Meltdown level 10. She's saying Jen is trying to steal you. I sighed, thanked him, and went on with my day. By lunch, I had 4 missed calls from her and messages ranging from apologies to accusations to desperate pleas. We need to talk seriously, the last one said. Tonight. When I got home at 6:15, the dining table was covered in documents. Bank statements, lease paperwork, insurance forms. She sat stiffly, eyes swollen but determined. Sit, she said. I didn't. What's this? If we're doing this open relationship thing, she said tightly, we need boundaries. Ground rules. Agreements. Structure. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was tragic. Now you want rules? Now you want structure? I'm trying to fix this, she snapped. No, I said. You're trying to regain control because everything blew up in your face. She slammed her hand on the table. Stop acting like you're the victim. You went out with someone I trusted. I stepped closer, calm, steady. You emotionally checked out of this marriage long before Saturday. You chased validation from Trevor. You dropped hints for months. You didn't talk to me. You blindsided me in public. You wanted freedom without consequences. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Let me make this simple, I said. I don't want to fix this. Not anymore. Her face collapsed. So what are you saying? I took a slow breath. I want to talk to a lawyer. The color drained from her face. No. No. Mark, you don't mean that. I do. You can't decide that on your own. Like you decided to open our marriage? She stumbled back a step, her voice trembling. This is insane. You're ending 7 years because of one mistake. It wasn't one mistake, I said quietly. It was 7 years of small cuts. That night just showed me how deep they went. She trembled so hard the papers on the table rustled. I didn't stay to comfort her. I didn't negotiate. I walked to the guest room, closed the door, and for the first time in years felt peace instead of guilt. The next day, I met with an attorney. No kids. Separate savings. A co-leased rental. It was almost shockingly simple. When I came home, Laura wasn't there. I started sorting through my things. It was sobering how little we truly shared. She came home later than usual, holding takeout. I brought your favorite, she said softly. I sat. We ate mostly in silence until she said, I saw Jenna today. I kept my eyes on my food. Okay. I went to her office, she continued. I tried to talk to her. And she told me we're not friends anymore, Laura whispered. She said I've been awful for years. That people are tired of me manipulating everything. Tears spilled again. Is that really what people think of me? Yes, I said. She looked like I'd struck her. But it was the truth she needed, not the lie she wanted. Her voice broke. So you've already chosen. You've made up your mind. I put down my fork. I talked to a lawyer today. I filed the initial paperwork. The chair scraped violently as she stood. You can't do that. You can't just give up on us. Like you didn't give up on me. She shook, devastation twisting across her face. You're throwing everything away. No, I said. You threw it away. I'm just acknowledging it. She sobbed as I walked to the guest room again. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Jenna. She showed up today. She looked unstable. You okay? Just filed for divorce, I wrote back. It's getting messy. Need anything? She replied. Coffee? A distraction? Witness protection? Despite everything, I smiled. I'm all right. Thanks. Weeks passed in a blur of paperwork, arguments, and quiet resolve. Friends reached out, many admitting they'd seen this coming long before I did. Even people from her side quietly told me they weren't surprised. When the divorce was finalized 2 months later, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, solid ground under my feet. Jenna texted me the same day. Congrats on your freedom. Drinks. We met downtown, laughed, talked about new beginnings. We stayed friends. No pressure, no drama. Months went by. I focused on rebuilding my life. Then one day, I ran into Dylan at the grocery store. You look good, he said. Lighter. I nodded. I am. He smiled. She moved to Colorado, by the way. Fresh start. Good, I said. I hope she finds whatever she was looking for. And I meant it. A year after that party, life was quiet, steady, peaceful. I wasn't walking on eggshells anymore. I wasn't waiting for the next test, the next ambush. I was finally living. And as I stood in my kitchen one night, pouring myself a drink, it hit me. The moment she tried to break me was the moment I finally chose myself. If you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe, drop a like, and leave a comment. Your support means everything.